Morning, Tom.
Morning, Paul.
How are you doing?
Very well, thanks. Yeah.
Good, good. So this is the first one of our, and what we think might be turn into a little series of fireside chats like this between us, which we might do monthly. We might do more if people want us to, but it's just kind of a monthly update and a chat about what we've been doing, power related, and maybe a little bit of a look under the bonnet and about what PoW's all about, where it came from, how it works. So that's what we're doing today.
Yeah, I think it's certainly. I'm hugely excited about the way things are evolving and the changes, the interest levels. So I think it's great to have this as almost as a diary. But I think if there are people working on similar projects that might find our journey interesting, that's great. And who knows where this will lead us to a certain extent. We have huge ambition, but where we get to will be
I don't think either of us can answer that, do we? And
exactly.
And the nice thing about that is that's a lot like a career, isn't it? And it's very easy to say that when you look at people whose careers are very successful, it's very easy to say that was always going to be the way. But I think even if you asked a successful person, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, when they were really into the weeds or the growth phases of their careers, I don't think they could tell you where it was going. So I think there's a good link between that and work and careers and relationship with work itself, which is what People on Work's all about.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting. Yeah, the idea of People on Work. I mean, technically speaking, it is an incorporated company. It is a legal entity in its own right. It has a legal personality, I think is the exact phrase.
Right. I didn't know that was the right way to talk about it.
So yeah, maybe the journey, the arc of People on Work is a career in itself in many ways. What was interesting, particularly this week, we had our first, I suppose, paid gig.
Yes.
That's a line in the sand.
Yes.
It's sort of like a starting point.
Yes.
And every organisation, every business has to at some point send out invoice number 1.
Yes.
And charge a customer for a product, for a service, and get that first pound in the bank account.
Yes. $1, as our friends in America might say.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's, for me, that's a huge landmark for the last week of October in 2020.
Yes, because I mean, for the people who didn't know it, we although we were talking about People on Work for a while, the company was only incorporated in May, wasn't it?
26th of May.
26th of May.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and obviously 2020 has been a pretty exceptional year, without wanting to go too much into that, which will be covered better elsewhere. But yeah, to start a new company during this year and to be working on building up our kind of library of interviews, which is what we focused on first, and talking to people about the concept and what we're doing and why, to get to the point where we've got our first paying client and the promise of 2 or 3 more very close behind that. It feels like a really good place to be.
Yeah. So in fact, I think this week we've had 3 on the bounce. So on Wednesday we had Chelmsford City Council talking about careers and work in environmentally sustainable businesses. On Thursday, am I getting my days the wrong way around?
No, I think you're right. Yeah.
Then on Thursday there was Essex 2020 Talent Forward programme. And we're working in partnership with them. We'll be interviewing the panel speakers that were involved. In fact, I've got this morning, I've made arrangements and they're all getting in touch with me next week to do interviews by Zoom. So that'll be filmed, edited and up on the website, I'd have thought, before the end of November. And that's an interesting legacy for for Talent Forward. That's a program that works across the county, and Richard and his team there have been very enthusiastic about making science and maths and engineering jobs within the county more public, and actually People and Work's a great way for them to do that. So
yes,
it was a one-day event, but there's some footprint left behind through People and Work's channel interviews.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
And then I think on Thursday, then the third one on the bounce was an organisation that I've been talking with for probably a couple of months now, the Covent Garden Market Association.
Brilliant.
Which runs, it's a very historic market, obviously. Covent Garden Market goes back hundreds of years, but it moved over to a site in Battersea, I think, back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And David, the chairman there, Rebecca, the head of communications, are fully behind the project, and we'll soon be interviewing stall holders, customers, suppliers, making the Covent Garden Market a more visible organisation.
Yeah. I think we're both very excited about that one, because you remember back to one of our first videos was Darren Cox, who's a local greengrocer in Chelmsford. Yeah. And he was talking about this kind of magical world of the wholesale market, which he made sound a bit like, he made sound a bit like Diagon Alley, and so to actually be working with them and talking to the people within the organisation and customers, as you say, stall holders, bringing that to life. It's kind of lifting the lid on something that okay, it doesn't matter that so much that we didn't know much about how that kind of worked, but I think that would be pretty typical of people who weren't actually involved in the industry, who I wouldn't say most people are not working in that line of work would know how it works. So to be able to start sharing that one story at a time from the people who are working it is really exciting, and it's going to be fun to see where that goes.
Yeah, well, it's open to the flower markets. So there's two: there's fruit and veg and flowers. The flower side is open to the public, and my wife is desperate for us to go. It'd be a great date.
Excellent.
To go, for a trip without the kids, and go down to the flower market and come back with a boot full of flowers for. Yes. I guess they're really cheap, aren't they? If you buy boxes of them.
Yeah.
Fill the house with flowers for a week or two.
Yeah, sounds good.
The other bit of a landmark, I think, is actually later this afternoon. I'm interviewing a guy called Danny.
Okay.
I think he's a football coach. I'm not sure. I'll find out later today what he does. And he is the first volunteer from Ormiston Denes Academy.
Fantastic.
So this Carol's the career lead there. That's been
Carol Budgeon. Yeah.
Carol Budgeon. Yeah, she's really supported People on Work, and sees how a series of alumni films from their school would be particularly effective.
Yes.
So Danny's the first volunteer. Hopefully he's got some friends that he can recommend, and we can drag along and start building a playlist for them.
Yeah, fantastic.
And then we've got another 2,500 secondary schools to cover off, and then we're done.
Yeah, it shouldn't take long. By the time next month comes along, we'll have made a really good dent in that. So lots of things going on. But if we kind of, seeing as this is the first one of these kind of chats that we've had, if we sort of dial the clock back, so People on Work is really, and we've talked about this a lot. It's really about an individual person, and we've both done our interviews. Everybody answers the same questions. What do you like about your work? How did you start out? And what would you say to somebody starting out today? Everybody answers those same questions. And when somebody answers those questions, you'll get an insight into not just what they think, but also their experience. And the idea is, if you don't know somebody who does that job, or you didn't know anything about that industry, a bit like we were talking about fruit and veg and flowers, then you're hearing a little bit more about it from somebody who's actually doing the work, and then the ability to share that online, on YouTube, free to air for anybody to watch, it gets that insight and experience out there to anybody who wants to watch it.
Well, we were talking, a few weeks ago, we were talking about my old history studies when I was at school.
Yeah.
And the difference between primary and secondary information. The difference between a diary from a foot soldier in the First World War trenches as an example of primary evidence, and then Churchill's war diaries after the Second World War as something of a secondary document.
Yes.
Or perhaps a historian's view of the Second World War written in the 70s. That would definitely be a secondary document. There's nothing quite like people on work in terms of that primary resource, and the interviews. And I'm always amazed at how honest and thoughtful the responses are. I mean, people enjoy talking about themselves on the whole as well.
Yes. Yeah.
But they, everyone's personal journey.
Yeah.
Obviously, and it's true for everyone. There are dark days and there are highlights and everything in between, and people love sharing that. And that personal testimony, I think, really comes across in some of the interviews, and they're all true. They may not be correct for the industry or the sector or the region or whatever it is, but for that individual at that time, that story is true.
Yes.
And what I'm really looking forward to is seeing how people on work interviews evolve. I'd love for us to. I mean, the police service are a bit funny about giving interviews, but wouldn't it be great to have 100 police men and women that have all had very similar careers? Because I guess how you join and how you progress through the ranks is all quite. But to see the differences in the nuances, region to region, city to countryside, old to young, to see that variation firsthand, I think would be a really interesting insight into what it's like to be a policeman.
Yeah, I completely agree, and what you're saying is absolutely right. I mean, in the past, I would say the kind of resources that are available that give you information about what it's like to do certain jobs and work are kind of secondary sources, or were mostly secondary sources. And even if they were interviews with people doing the work, they were the people were interviewed as somebody who works for the police, or as somebody who works in the National Health Service, or whatever their job was. And we're kind of doing something a little bit different to that, because we're asking the person who's doing the work what it feels like to do that work. We're not asking them as their job title or a representative of a particular company or industry. And I think what we've found, and we didn't know this was going to happen, but what we're finding is that one size doesn't fit all. And you're absolutely right. Two accounts from people doing the same work can vary and be very different. Now, that can, and this is something we've also talked about as well. So if you're watching that as somebody who's interested in, or maybe curious about a particular line of work, where does that leave you if let's say 5 people are saying different things? Well, the fact that they're answering the same questions, what that really turns into, and I think both our history teachers would be proud of us for recognizing this, is what that really means is we've got 5 sources of evidence that give us so much more perspective and experience and information or data to figure out what that means to us. And you could still argue, or somebody who's very kind of has a hard position one way or the other might argue, yes, but that's still giving a certain view of the work or a certain view of the world. But what view of the world would that person making the decision have if they didn't have access to those people talking? They would have much less.
Well, okay. I think. I mean, there are. Well, and we say this, of course. So next Tuesday is the US election.
Yes.
And we have, Trump going for his second term.
Yes.
Of alternative facts
Yeah.
in a post-truth world. So I think it is worth remembering when you watch these films, and you've certainly commented about a couple of the feedback. There can be a certain amount of personal branding.
Yeah. Yes.
How people answer the films.
Not with people on work. With the if somebody's interviewed as, say, a police officer or a nurse working for the NHS, is that what you mean?
No. So in that case, absolutely, 100%. That person's been selected. They're towing the company line.
Yes.
No doubt of that. But I think people on work is part of that social media conversation.
Yeah.
And people present their truth in the way that they want to. And I guess there's some self-selection as well in that. I've certainly approached a couple of people I've approached have said, actually, Tom, I really am very unhappy with work at the moment. I prefer not to be interviewed.
Yeah.
And that's, those stories, people on work, no one's going to ever see those stories.
I suppose at the moment we're not. What we're not doing is saying that anybody who's that you have to, it's selective. You're absolutely right. So if somebody wants to do it, they're selecting in, and if they don't want to do it, they're selecting out. I do think, though, in the future we'll be able to, and not exactly sure what this looks like, what this would look like right now, but the person who's not happy in their work, I think they could still talk from the point of view of their relationship with work, and opening up what it is about, what it is they don't like, what it is they're going through. I think you're going to get it's going to be a different kind of insight, but you're still being what that person's still going to be able to do is again, lift the lid on what's going on and where it's coming from, and some of that might be resolvable.
Yeah, so that's it. So, okay, so there's definitely two. Well, there are two different response. When I say the pushback comes in two different ways. There are people that are unhappy with their job, and that's not necessarily the work. And in fact, many people really enjoy the work.
Yes,
they love whatever it is that they do and how they interact with their customers or their whatever. It's just all the stuff around the edge.
Right.
Maybe they've got line management responsibilities and they've got team members that are annoying, or maybe they've got a boss that's annoying them downstream, or
or a 3-hour commute to work, or something.
Perhaps. So there's that where the job, the envelope that the work in exists in is difficult, and then there are other people, I think, where work is just, they see it very much as part of their life.
Yeah.
And they say, actually, Tom, I'm not that interested in work. I turn up, I turn the handle, go home. And actually my life is all about, going surfing at the weekend, or being a dad, or whatever it happens.
So it's not the central part of their life. There's a really fantastic careers professional and psychologist called David Dean, who's done a lot of work in this area, and he really talks a lot about that where are the voices, or it's almost like the voices of the people who have that kind of relationship with work aren't heard or are suppressed, and it's really important to know that if that is the place that work fits into your life, and that's the best for you, then that's perfectly fine, and nobody should feel anything. And I know it's not about feeling bad about that, or that that somebody should feel any different about that. It's just that's okay. If that's your relationship with work, that's okay. You don't get that message very strongly through social media.
No, and God, things like LinkedIn, people are just shouting all the time how
Yeah,
excited they are about X, Y, and Z projects.
yeah,
Whereas actually, you look at a lot of people, that there are lots and lots of jobs, trades, professions where people just turn up and do it and go home, and they do a great job.
yes,
I'm sure
yeah,
there are bits of it that they like, but there are probably bits of it that they dislike.
yeah,
But it's just a job,
yeah, yeah,
and that's
agreed.
absolutely fine. And they earn their money, they look after their families, and
Yeah,
they love looking after their dog, or whatever
yeah,
whatever it happens to be.
yeah.
Um,
I agree. Talking of dogs, and I hate to do this, but and you know, probably sharing this more widely than I expected to. But my dog has a has an appointment with a medical person and looking at the clock, they're going to be turning up very soon. So
yes.
I think we're going to pick up where we left off because there's a lot I think given more time we would have carried on talking about.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to doing this again. I know this is not the first time we've done it, but I think what it's already proved is that you and I could talk for days on this, and there's more to say.
Yeah.
And if we're sharing it as well, and I'm not expecting many people to watch this, but in time, if people do watch it and they do have questions, or they've got questions about people on work, or
Yeah.
questions,
Comment.
from comments, anything about what we're doing or what maybe we could be doing, then that's what we're doing this for as well, just to
Yeah.
lift the lid on the on or look under the bonnet of what people on work's all about.